Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot and very happy to be here today. We have a very interesting panel discussion that we're going to be having regarding really satellite weapons, the targeting of humanity, what's going on from the sky as well as the ground, and the big picture related to all of that. So I want to introduce my panel members briefly here. And we've got Miles Johnston, and many people will be familiar with him. And we have Deborah Tavares, and she's been on several of our panels. And we also have Alexandra JB, and she has also been helping to organize these panels and getting them underway. So she's been among us often as well. So now what I'm going to do is go around the sort of circle and let people give a little bit of details about themselves one at a time. And please be aware that, let's see, it is Deborah Tavares who does not have video. So please understand that when Deborah is talking, I will put the banner on the screen. And then when other people are talking, we will show them. So let's start off. And this is not to go into your spiel, everyone in the panel. This is to introduce yourself. So I'm Kerry Cassidy, an investigative reporter, documentary filmmaker, and producer. And I've been part of running Project Camelot now for 14 years, believe it or not. So now let's bring, I guess, Deborah Tavares on the screen and as on the banner here. And Deborah, can you introduce yourself, say something about your background?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so this is Deborah Tavares. I do run the website stopthecrime.net as well as primarywater.org. I am a third-generation self-employed home builder, and we built multifamily construction in Southern California for a number of decades. My entire family, from my great-grandfather to my grandfather to our family and my extended family members, were all in and are still in construction. And it was through that process that I was noticing much of what I've now discovered and have spent years in researching. And I am an investigative reporter as well, and a researcher, and I condense and literally reveal everything that I research based on documents, and not just one-off documents, but documents I find approved on all levels in all cities, all counties, all states, all countries, and also all documents that are approved worldwide in Europe and elsewhere. These documents we'll be discussing today are approved and in play worldwide. So thank you, Kerry.
Okay, very good. And then we'd like to also hear now from Alexandra. Please introduce yourself, Alexandra, and I will bring you on the screen as well. Go ahead.
Thank you. In Sweden, I am a medical doctor, specialist in neurology and psychiatry, and now I live in Czech Republic, where I come from originally. I've lived here for a few years. I've been forced here almost, and I have From Illusion to Reality YouTube channels in 3 languages, and I have been attacked a lot because I have exposed the head of Illuminati and the head of Shadow One World government, William Van Damme. It's why I am attacked a lot by the authorities here. And I am very interested to do something with the documentation that Deborah has shown us and came with in order to make better the legislation for humanity, made better, and we have the opportunity to nullify all that if we play our cards well and use the documentation, for example, that Deborah has shown us.
Okay, very good. And Miles Johnston, please introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Miles. I've gone into pirate radio and I'm a broadcaster. I've been on both sides of the camera, the microphone, making TV programs started the BBC. But as long ago as 5, they tried bumping me off. I think it was maybe a bit earlier than that, and they've been trying to do that for a long time ever since. And what I've been doing is that we developed 2 of the most powerful FM pirate stations out of Ireland, and we're allowed to do it, pumping 1 million watts out of the Irish border. And then there's a whole range of complexities that we find that the technology that we were using for that was somehow communicating with us. And then this has led to further intelligence, or AI. I mean, this is decades before we heard that term, where the technology would communicate with us, but then there was also things that were monitoring that of a large octoform type shape, scuttlers, some kind of mechanized biological dimensional creatures. And that I've been doing the BASIS project. Essentially, I recorded the Irish era of pirate radio broadcasting, which is like 40 years ago. And one day I had to record somebody talking about a base in England where they were making aliens with Germans, reptilians, greys, and other things involved. And that in vitro fertilization was actually developed to create these transgenic beings. So 23, 24 years later, I'm still doing the BASIS project. We've had a stream of documentaries made about the content of my work. And essentially, it's population management, artificial intelligence, transgenic beings made here with the military, by us, by our people. These are high crimes. A lot of people are committing extremely serious crimes, breaking just about any rule you want to have on any universe you want to be in. And I'm delighted to meet you together today. I'm basically a broadcast engineer, which has applied broadcast engineering logic to searching out the problems that we are facing today.
Okay, very good. And former BBC reporter, isn't that right?
No, I've never been a BBC reporter. I've reported on the BBC. I was in 5th form with my school uniform on when I first appeared on television in Belfast, which is the big city of Belfast, I'll have to remind you. There are other, and that's Northern Ireland, and there's a whole pile of reasons why the whole history of Ireland has been the way it is, and it's extremely relevant to today's evolution of humanity and the way it's going, as to why that ancient story, which vestiges of it are left in Ireland, are being so heavily in our consciousness today. But essentially, I'm not a reporter. I'm a journalist by de facto. That's what I'm doing. But I'm essentially a broadcast systems engineer, TV. I put you on the telly, darling.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So the distinction is made, and but you did work for the BBC. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm a broadcast. Yeah, BBC Northern Ireland special projects down in London, and then I was putting on this little bitty station called Kiss FM, running 1 million watts into Belfast. So the BBC fired me in 1987. And then I joined some other little bitty upstart of a station called Sky News, run by some other guy who thought he knew what he was doing, called Rupert Murdoch. And they fired me as well. So
very good.
I don't know when to leave.
All right.
So that's when I discovered there were these spider things attached onto staff's back, and there's a lot of very insidious stuff going on in television and broadcasting.
Okay, well, we can go down that road with you.
But I'm going to mention Tim Reefat. He's a good friend of mine.
All right. Well, now I'm going to start with, we're going around the circle, so bear with me here. What we're going to do now is we're going to start with Deborah Tavares. And Deborah, you're going to, I think you have some sort of breaking news in terms of something you want to cover first of all, and I'll let you go into that. Please be aware of the time and allow yourself, I don't know, 5 or 7 minutes to go on, and then we'll try to go to the next person and we'll come back to you in, due time and all that. So just to be aware. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I do appreciate that. Yes, Deborah Tavares with StopTheCrime.net. Now, what is most important for me right now today is that everyone understands that this border wall is a distraction for the bigger policies that are now being looked at. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to break them down. First is what we're hearing about the Green New Deal. And everyone needs to understand it is a done deal. We're being told that it's going before the 116th Congress today to be discussed, and likely they say it will be defeated. Now, today in my local paper, it does say Green New Deal to get a Senate vote today. And here's some of the comments that the CEO of USA Inc. has said.
Okay, now I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure that you make it clear because you have an international audience that this is international.
Yes, I understand. Okay, so when I say CEO of USA Inc., I am speaking about Donald Trump. And we are a corporation, and he is the CEO of the corporation. So that is what he is, and that's what I will call him, but I will put the name of the CEO so that there is no misunderstanding. So here's what Trump was saying today as he was mocking the Green New Deal. And he says it sounds like a high school term paper that got a low mark. He said he really can't believe that taking away your car or taking away your airplane rights and that you're not allowed to own cows anymore, and permanently eliminating all planes, cars, cows, oil, and gas would be logical. They go on to say the Green New Deal would be would take away other things as well.
Okay, now let's one moment. Not everyone knows what the Green New Deal is, and again, you're saying that this is something worldwide. So,
yes,
are other countries voting on it, or has it already been voted through? And please explain what the Green New Deal is. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for that question, Kerry, because what the Green New Deal is, it's really, and everyone can look and type in the Green New Deal, and you'll see exactly the types of resource elimination that is planned for everybody worldwide. And what are we talking about here? We're talking about the climate action plans that every city, every country worldwide has already adopted. And the climate action plans literally define and tell us what we're going to be reducing. And I'm going to go over that so that all of you that are listening understand the Green New Deal is a real big deal, and it is already a done deal. So when you're hearing the shenanigans and the theater of the illusion of a government batting this back and forth, whether they will approve it or not, you need to understand it's already approved. And these policies are already ensnaring your lives now, and will be increasingly ensnaring your lives as we are continually hit with weather, weapons, and economic attacks worldwide. And that's when these policies will continue to fester and mushroom and strangle us. So let's go over what some of these things are so that you understand. All building, all construction is going to be required to be retrofitted to literally comply to all of the new green energy codes. So what does that mean? Everything in your home will be connected to the Internet of Things. That's why initially the electric smart grid was rolled out, the wireless smart grid, and also now why we're seeing the wireless electric meters for water. And this will allow your local countries, your local cities to reduce your usage when you have gone over your allotted amount. Now let me explain how that works here in California. And this is worldwide, but I'm giving you a microcosm of an explanation. Here in California, by next year, 2020, all of us must reduce our use of water down to 55 gallons per person per day. Now, we've had many people looking at experimenting with that now before the requirement goes into place. And they have found with as much conservation as they can possibly literally create that they've only been able to get their daily consumption per person down to about 190 gallons per day. When they call the water company and tell them that, they say, well, how are we going to comply to that massive reduction? The water company tells them there is no more watering of outside plants, that 55 gallons a day per person is only for interior use. And we go on to all of our vehicles. The policies all state that we must get off of fossil fuels. Now, there's nothing ever based from fossils. Dead dinosaurs or petroleum never came from fossil fuel. Fossils and petroleum is a renewable natural energy, just as water is renewable. And they're talking about massive reductions, as I just mentioned, in water. And they're going to, and already are, building and dedicating millions and millions of dollars towards new water infrastructure for wastewater treatment so that they can literally create reuse of your fecal, urine, and pharmaceutical elimination. And we're seeing now here in the heavy rains in Northern California that our wastewater treatment plants are literally bludgeoning with too much water. We're getting fecal material literally coming out of our sewer lines, out of our manholes, floating down our streets in many areas, and going into our creeks and rivers, as many of you are experiencing worldwide as well. Because maintenance of all of the infrastructure has been intentionally deferred so that we would experience the shifting into a new modality, and that's called the Climate Action Plan. And this will create massive new green jobs of retrofitting. So all of you will and must and will be required to do mini retrofits. Let's talk about what that looks like. We're talking about new faucets for your kitchens, for your shower heads that are wireless, that connect to your wireless smart meter, water meter. We're talking about your wireless electric meter, and all of your appliances must connect to that as well. Everything can be turned off remotely, pulsed. You're monitored, you're tracked in your homes. These are surveillance devices, and the ability to turn off your use of any overuse that you commit. Because if you do go over the required amounts of usage, then you will be cut off. We're finding out now that many people here are in the country. We rely on wells and well water, and we're now being told that the extraction of well water usage will certainly, they say, affect our aquifers, and we're going to be charged for the extraction of the water. And that will become a fee that will be applied to our property taxes. So if you do not pay for your property tax discrepancy of water usage, you can literally be foreclosed upon. That is the plan. And they're also looking at new accounting reforms, which we're seeing here in this war-torn area that has been hit by intentional fires. We're seeing new accounting practices rolling out in our cities through Ernst & Young, which is an international accounting firm. They're dreaming up taxes on all natural capital. Natural capital is soil, grass, trees, air, sun, water. There will be taxes based on all of the natural resources. This is why we have primarywater.org as a website, so that everyone understands the best news you're going to hear from me today is the fact that we're not running out of water, and it is a renewable. And I cannot underscore enough that people listen to the YouTube Primary Water Explained, because right now throughout the world we're being told we're running out, that they're even now calling the aquifers as being fossil aquifers, just as they've been saying we have fossil fuel and we don't. And so the enormity of the economic hit that the climate action plans is now also having on our demographics is exponential. This is why we're having massive increased homelessness, because there is no housing here in Santa Rosa and other areas as well. After we're hit with some type of weaponized assault, we're certainly seeing people leaving Northern California that were affected by the fires by the droves every day. Our communities are changing. The rebuilds are being limited because what they're coming up now with are rebuilding codes that do not allow and provide for the rebuilding. So when you're hearing rebuilding after the fires, that is not necessarily the case. While there are some homes being rebuilt, many are still awaiting determination if there's enough water now on their property to constitute a livable living structure. That's now in heavy debate because they've now drawn regions in our community where they're saying there are low water tables. And I must refer to the reality of water and what Muammar Gaddafi did. And again, this is on primarywater.org. And Muammar Gaddafi had constructed the largest irrigation system in world history and tapped into primary water cycle. And this is so important for everyone to understand. And this primary water that Muammar Gaddafi tapped into supplied 6.5 million cubic meters of fresh new water per day to the various cities in Libya. And this enabled the country to grow fruits, vegetables, grains that they were otherwise unable to grow and to cultivate because it was a desert region. And they didn't have rain and snowmelt, which is only the secondary water cycle. That's what we've all been taught where our water comes from, rain and snowmelt. It doesn't. Rain and snowmelt is the evaporation of primary water that is continuously created under the mantle by the coming together of hydrogen and oxygen, turns to vapor, and then percolates up through the fissures and cracks of the earth, fills up deep underground aquifers and the like. It's pure fresh water. People that are drinking this water have a much higher IQ. And in the situation in Libya, the project cost about $25 billion US, and it was completed without financial support from any major country or loans from the IMF banks. And sadly, in 2011, this incredible achievement was destroyed by NATO and the US with depleted uranium nuclear bombs, cutting off the water supply to over 6 million people. And it threw Libya into a humanitarian crisis. Even the well drilling equipment was blown up. So we're facing the massive reduction of water and the reconfiguring of where human settlements will be allowed to be built. Because as they take away the water by evaporation and by all of the overhead aerial spraying programs, we will be redefined with where we're able and unable to live. And right now, with the Green New Deal being bandied around in the House right now in the United States, it's literally the Green New Deal. If you look it up, as horrific as it sounds, it's more horrific than it sounds because you're only hearing the high points, and that's just the cliff notes. The next big issue I want to bring up, and I've just got a few more minutes and then I'll turn it over, but I want to underscore the fact that we have a new energy system in process right now through a corporation called Solaren, S-O-L-A-R-E-N. Rothschild and global corporate agencies, along with the backing of the United States and many other countries, are now fashioning a new delivery system of electricity. And what do I mean by that in a Cliff Note explanation? Is because of solar dimming and the night skies, they're saying that even though the solar business has expanded worldwide, the ground-based solar systems, they have limitations. And because of the increased solar dimming, they're not as efficient as they once were. And the increased solar dimming is literally going to reduce their efficiency to where people will beg for the new type of system that is now already deployed and is expanding worldwide. And what do I mean by this? This is solar from space. And this is why here in Northern California, many of you may be hearing that Pacific Gas and Electric has been responsible for our fires. They have. And you're hearing that it's because they haven't maintained the vegetation removal from the power lines. That by and large is also true, but that's not where the story stops. Pacific Gas and Electric on their website, and again, Pacific Gas and Electric is Rothschild. All the utilities in the United States and worldwide are controlled by the cabal. And they say on the website, energy from outer space. Energy from outer space may seem like the stuff of science fiction, but actually it's closer to reality than you might think. And they say, find out how researchers are boldly going where no watt has gone before. So what we're looking at here is solar radiation. They're telling us is the most promising form of space-based power. While a growing solar energy industry already exists, outsourcing to space will help solve a lot of issues. Ground-based solar power is limited by night skies, of course, and cloud cover, of course, which we know is intentional dimming from the aerosols, and they say, and the atmosphere. And in space, the sun never goes away. They say solar panels in space will be attached to orbiting satellites, and the electricity generated will be transformed to microwaves and beamed with lasers back wirelessly to Earth. And these are the types of patents that discuss this type of operation as not only being and having the capability of being targeting military weapons with the beaming of lasers to Earth, which is likely one of the layers of all the fires we've been seeing worldwide, because this operation already exists, but also the fact that they say in their patents they are altering the weather as well. So I have some YouTubes up that specifically talk about this on stopthecrime.net. I would ask everybody to please take a look at one YouTube entitled Fires Worldwide, Space-Based Weapons. And we talk about Pacific Gas and Electric, which I said is Rothschild. We are all being targeted throughout the entire world. Doesn't matter if you're third world or if you're thinking you're in an advanced world. We're all being targeted and we're being eliminated by programs for mass depopulation. And there are many, many layers to that. This is one layer. The report from Iron Mountain talked about how the illusion of climate and the changing of climate would promote global fear. And we're seeing these programs now implemented now that are fear-based. Literally, there are people that have been engineered, psychologically programmed into believing that the continuation of Earth as we have known it is going to be dependent on us reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and our CO2 emissions. And when you look at the CIA document 1960 Memorandum for Climate Control, you find that this was a scheme hatched years ago and all part of the report from Iron Mountain. And it talks about the acidification of the ocean, which we're seeing. We're seeing the lack of oxygen now in our oceans. We're seeing the use of frequencies in our oceans. We're seeing mass death of sea life, mass death of us. The 5G that is rolling out is just another layer of a kill grid. We already have kill grids in place. Here in the United States, Trump has signed an executive order to expeditiously roll out 5G, and it is to connect all farms everywhere throughout this country. And there are regular meetings to determine how quickly this rollout is occurring. It has been said in those executive orders that the FCC and the FAA are to stand down. There is to be no impediment to rolling out 5G. The United States also is funding 5G rollouts in many other foreign countries as well. This is a global takedown. This is a mass murder grid. And what all of these frequencies, your mobile phones, the cell towers, the antennas, the Wi-Fi, all of the wireless that we're bringing into our homes, and the forced requirement of retrofitting, which will expand wireless exponentially, it's causing cell death. We are being sliced and diced. Our immune systems are being compromised to the extent that we're getting increased cancers and many other physical ailments that sadly doctors are not able to identify, do not identify, and they just medicate you. So I would recommend that you go to stopthecrime.net, print off the symptom lists on frequencies. Understand we're all suffering from various aspects of symptoms from frequencies, every single one of us. And I will leave it at that for right now, and I'll certainly look forward to coming back and going into more of what we're seeing here as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much, Deborah. A tour de force, really. And she covers a lot of ground in a shorter period of time, I have to say. So now let's have Miles share his side of the story from his perspective. And Miles, go ahead.
Well, welcome. I certainly concur. All that information that Deborah's just given is a practical rollout of clearly a destruction of all life on the planet that must be controlled from negative dimensional beings who don't want anything living here. I remember Dr. Robert Duncan referring to Project Puppet Master, probably Soul Catcher, wanting to take control of everything right down to the last blade of grass. What the Rothschilds have been doing, and the other creatures, which I'll call them, who's not human, have been doing, is open the floodgates to 95% of dark matter life to flood into this 3D reality, to essentially infuse, take over, and infest this actual physical reality. And the things which are opposing that are the negative entropy thinkers, i.e., all life that exists here in the first place. So if we are the impediment to the program of these creatures taking control of this domain. So the logic to this situation is that over the summer, over the last 6 to 9 months, I've been covering Tim Rifat's emergence on a wider scale. Tim Rifat was the apprentice to the MI6 magician Colin Bloy, who was responsible for an awful lot of the stuff that was going on in the 1980s, responsible for the fall of the Soviet Union and the attempt to take down China. Failed because of a different energetic system that the Chinese have. Mr. Rifat has also been to every single aspect of complex number space, which are the highly complex, convoluted aspects of energetics, which give reality to different energy systems of worlds, just like our world. He's had a chat with Lucifer. He pours scorn on the likes of what the U.S. Air Force did with Mr. Aquino, who I understand is now in a lot of trouble with the Illuminati. And he is taking the war right inside the realities and dimensions that these creatures occupy. He's been there, done it, got the T-shirt, and is weaponizing everything that's needed to set this reality back on course for where it should be. Those involved who feel that they can conduct this criminal activity that Deborah's been referring to, I've said for quite some time that anybody who feels that they've got a comfortable seat, no matter where that seat is, should feel very uncomfortable because a lot of these criminals will take action like this, and it's clear they're taking action aggressively, very fast, because they've got something that's going to take them on. So this is inaction, and I think this is possibly what Britain's Super Soldier program was really all about down at Burnworthy Manor. In the last couple of weeks, I've had a new case which is shocking, insofar as this is why there's such a large scale of child trafficking, the demand for the creative juices of living children, literally with their throats slit and their heads cut off. And there's a very interesting painting that's gone on Facebook in the last couple of days, with one of the top Rothschilds standing with this massive painting over the fireplace, with various parts of babies being devoured by this black monstrous creature. So we probably need to wake up to the slight sort of issue that we are in a bloody war for our existence and survival, as Elon Musk said. Which part of existential extinction do you not understand? Although he said that maybe slightly differently, I'm sort of rephrasing that. It's interesting, there's a whole lot of space launches being planned rather imminently. It's also interesting that they've switched from carbon fibers to stainless steel. That's another issue. But in essence, what's happened here is that in Scotland, which is well known for its Masonic, the Masons, all the Masons, the Goyim eaters, I'll just call them, all feel that they're somehow special, and they're going to get, as some others call them, they call them the first degrees, the people who press the buttons in 3D, who are actioning this stuff, all think that they're going to get away with it. They'll be all right. No, they aren't. And there are special containment areas which are being constructed for them in certain places, and I'll leave that for their mutual imagination, which will essentially filter out the toxicity of their essence, so that the rest of us can move on in a much better and much more fantastic and lovely place. My understanding is the emergence of the divine feminine has, shall we say, become rather an unexpected arrival in certain quarters, which is why there's such an effort to push this planet into a dead zone. Essentially, what's happening is that for quite some time, the dimensional entry points into this realm have been switched on a one-way system. Going back into ancient history and more the recent sort of histories in various places, the gates on our side have been left open. So whatever's on the other side comes into here and can have free reign. That's all going to be corrected. So we have control of our domain, and the tables will literally be turned on those who felt they could get a free ride in this place. And that's what's happening right now. The case that Alexandra mentioned, the arrival of this young woman who suddenly, the case of this woman from Edinburgh, essentially had a child about 11 years ago, was deemed infertile. She never had children again. And then suddenly, this case was, she suddenly got pregnant. Turns out that her estranged partner had been feeding her, at the instruction of certain individuals, a very strong fertility drug, where she probably got pregnant. She was discovered 13 weeks pregnant. Doctors were amazed because her medical records, this is all in documents. So medical records, you no way you're going to have a child again. Suddenly you're 13 weeks pregnant. You have that child, and then 5 months later you have a second one. By the time those kids enter about 2.5, they're then forcibly taken off this woman on the basis that she may, at some time in the future, potentially cause emotional harm to those children. And this is a catch-all. There are thousands and thousands of these children are being taken by the state. So the difference with this is that we've got a paper trail, we've got actual documents. Those children go missing in state care for 24 hours. And when they come back with different eye color, different personalities, and different fundamental medical differences. Initially, we thought there'd been a soul swap where the souls had literally been removed and that was responsible for the eye color. We now understand what has been replaced in the children's home in Edinburgh is clones. And the actual children have now been traced, and we know the names of the family. They've been traced and tracked, but not physically obtained yet, or whether that'll ever happen, to a very rich family in England. So essentially, this woman was subtly deemed to have children, so that the soul energetics of a decaying husks of two individuals could escape the reincarnation trap and safely enter these children and then have all the memories and understandings in this 3D world, which they can't now afford to leave. And this is basically, we're now on the timeline where those elements which have felt they've been winning for millennia are going to lose. There are certain drawbacks to this, but this is a winning game for us, and a bloody end to them, to those individuals who are going.
Before you move on, I want you to explain if you're saying two, obviously people that were elderly and about to die, they had their, I suppose, their soul transplanted into these two young children.
Yes.
And their young souls were moved out in the process. So
we're not sure where they were moved to.
Right. Okay, just wait 1 second. I want to finish my question. We want to know if you know, or if someone knows, the identity of these two old people, because that is obviously of crucial importance, because these would be very dark individuals, needless to say, and ones that want to continue living. So we have a number of candidates for that position, people that have recently died, right?
Well, there's people who've recently died, died as a result of things done, which I recorded in Brighton during the summer. Now, I have to say that we were recording that in the presence of a number of individuals from a certain agency. Some people call it no such agency. So we're not doing, this hasn't been done under the counter. And that was observed, and things have happened to certain individuals in high places who've always felt they could get away with it. They're not getting away with it this time, and there's a little bit of a panic in the air on that. This is the first resistance. This has happened in quite some time, and I'm simply reporting this. There's quite a steep learning curve on all this, and for most individuals, but an interesting case with Amash, with the first witness that we had for the Amash project way back in 2011, the first victim of the Amash project, quite honestly. She was in a special hospital, mental hospital, where she was able to walk around, and she found a whole ward full of these really old people being kept running. They were ancient, extremely old people still alive. Now, that hospital's since been closed down, but it looks as if we've got a situation where these creatures, and John Irwin has referred to this in his data, what he was trained in way back. A lot of this is going back to the 50s, but without introducing too many names, that means that exactly that. We don't know we can find out who those individuals were and are. That, however, isn't possible right now because of practical details.
Oh, all right. Oh, so you don't know, you can find out, but you haven't found out yet. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, at the moment, we're trying to simply get further data on this from the individuals concerned. It's almost evolving as we speak. We now know that the individuals the family that these children went to. We now know that the children that are sort of in care and are being presented to this person as her children are clones. And we've got the physical evidence from the doctors concerned that these personality traits and eye color did actually happen. So this is physical observational records from the authorities. And it's interesting that the person concerned, through fear, maybe not making it, didn't come down twice. She then made her trip, and it now turns out that individual was part of the British Super Soldier program, Casbolt, the old people, all the old names that we know, and this individual was part of that program down in Burnworthy Manor, where Haley Mayer, Max Spears, James Casbolt, all those people were all trained, and by order of the Queen, we're all lined up to be shot, and it didn't work. Insofar as that they declined to do the decent thing and die. But that program is essentially a failure because of the flawed information that they got from the ancient data banks. And so the actual versions of the so-called Super Soldier program is now being employed to great financial gain to the Soviets or the Russians and the Chinese by Mr. Rifat. Now, another factor in this is, I understand, and Eamon Ansborough did mention this, that the UFO disclosure program has been announced by the Chinese in Moscow, and that is available on the Avalon Forum under a different name, if you want to look that up. Essentially, the Chinese are going to go for a reworking of the President of Grenada's United Nations statement. That's not a statement.
Treaty,
way back.
the treaty?
It's not a treaty. It's a United Nations declaration. I think Declaration 50 or whatever it is. And the President of Grenada, who did that way back in the late 90s, I think. That's when Grenada was invaded by the United States to prevent that individual from actioning that. And they took him out. That was when the invasion of Grenada happened. But the Chinese are pushing for a United Nations global disclosure on this UFO situation, this whole alien situation, specifically excluding Great Britain and the United States. And
Okay,
so there is
we'll
a
see
big,
where that goes.
yeah.
I
So
mean, this is an ET, this is a war not only with humans and ETs, but also ETs and ETs.
Yeah.
So
it's we've got a bit of a situation.
very good. Thank you for all of that. That's quite interesting. We do have evidence of soul transfer going on. It's not at all out of the question to assume that even individuals who've recently supposedly died and been, or taken down to Guantanamo and supposedly were executed, such as John McCain and the older Bush, their souls could have easily been already transferred into infant bodies.
Yeah, and it seems very clear that this woman should not have had children. It seems very clear that as she was part of the Super Soldier program, that suddenly they needed her to have kids.
Well, it has to do with the blood. Has to do with bloodlines. So they've only got so many candidates that are pregnant or able to be pregnant at any given time with the right combination. She must have a fair amount. No offense to her, of reptilian DNA, because otherwise,
well, she certainly is continuing to have so-called phantom pregnancies, where she'll be pregnant for 3 months and then the child will be taken.
Right. And this is very important. All right, we're going to move on because I want to give everyone a chance. And let's go to Alexandra now. And Alexandra, and let me say that those that are on camera, if you are not speaking, you can mute yourself, and you can also turn your camera off. You don't have to be sitting there sort of on camera if you don't wish to when someone else is speaking, because it's best that people focus on the person speaking, unless we're having a conversation, of course. So I don't know, sounds like there's something going on in the background, but at any rate, Alexandra, please proceed.
I don't know if Deborah has is she.
Okay. Hold on. Someone was trying to, never mind, someone was trying to reach me. I'm very sorry. I didn't realize that. I've now sent them to voicemail. So please do go ahead, Alexandra.
Okay, I would just ask also Miles, Laura, this woman that you are talking about, there were a lot of satanic. Kerry, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see and
Yes,
hear
yes,
you.
I can see you,
Okay.
Alexandra. I'll just keep my camera off and listen.
Okay, I cannot see anything. But anyway, I believe it was a lot of satanic Luciferians, numbers, numerology, and she was born on Halloween, and she has something special with her eyes that was very like special for the Luciferian. So there were a lot of these satanic.
Right.
I think the specialty with that is that she had a very similar eye issue than Madeleine McCann.
Yes.
Which is a whole different similar can of worms in terms of care homes and soul transference, particularly referring to a major home here in Wiltshire, where it is known that there are souls being transferred, human souls taken out and other souls put into humans as part of a program of infiltration here in Wiltshire.
Okay, so please, Alexandra, continue.
I would also ask you, Miles, Laura said something about a company, US company, cloning company, that they recommend that people can be cloned and so.
That to answer that, it may have been referring to a Netflix film which showed that in progress, but I don't think it was an actual. But I need to check that with her.
Because I would like to say, when we started to talk openly about the head of Illuminati and his YouTube channel and the information and the criminality in the YouTube channel, the video, he has taken down several of these videos, but one of the videos was about that he has the technology to transfer consciousness into another body, that you can choose a body of a woman or a man, exactly as you wish, if you are on his side. And the rest of us,
it's useful to know. I posted this on the internet recently. There's actually a French television show that is now on Netflix that is dealing with this, called, I believe it's called Transfers, and it is literally all about this. We have known about this in Project Camelot since the very early days. That means about 13 years ago, when we interviewed Dan Burish, who basically considers himself to be such an individual. And his soul was transplanted into a different body. And he is who he is at this moment. But nonetheless, this is something that Greys are famous for having the technology. So this is where the humans get the technologies from the aliens. But please do, rather than ask questions of Miles, it would be good for you to just continue on your own with whatever you have to contribute, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in this video that I'm talking about, under the control of the head of Illuminati, speaks a former employee of Czech Ministry of Interior. I don't know if you can see the man. He has fake memory loss in Norway, which was nonsense. He was working with recording of these videos for the head of Illuminati, where he is threatening to kill billions of people. So what I want to say is that we have certain people that we could actually go against legally. Can you hear me, Kerry?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Please continue.
Yeah, so that we are in a situation that we have politicians that don't work with any regulations for us, humanity. We don't punish people for huge false flags operation like 9/11. It's so many years ago. Nobody's been. Of course, they continue with worse and worse and worse things. And it's so open out there now that they want to kill billions of people and nothing is happening. And I am also very, not afraid, but concerned about the space-based weapons that the Illuminati certainly have, the shadow one-world government. And I know that high politician in your country, John Bolton, was talking about that United States needs to have space-based weapons for offensive against other countries. We have now here in these days Mike Pompeo, former CIA and Secretary of State now, who is, it's a very heavy propaganda here now, that the Chinese and the Russians are developing weapons for warfare in space, and they show pictures here in the Czech Republic what kind of weapons the Chinese and the Russians will have. And we know that your government or has attacked you with dual weapons already during the fires. And so I believe that if we know who these people are, so it's not only companies that should be responsible to pay all the damages because it's terrorism. But if we know that Rothschilds are involved and we know where we find them, so they should pay fully, totally everything, because this is high-level terrorism. So
sure, of course, and we still hear you and see you, so no problem at this end.
I would be very happy if we could discuss also this targeting. People are targeted by these satellite systems, and you have last week you had a very interesting whistleblower.
Yes, and I will be talking about him right after you are through here, so no problem, and thank you.
Yeah, but then I would like to also say this propaganda is also heavy within the religious part, or how we would call it, that they are pushing the propaganda that the Messiah will come now in March. And what do you say, if it's so close, their Messiah, it's the Antichrist, of course, they want to attack us heavily. So I expect the worst, that we have to defend ourselves. We are on our own. Nobody will do it for us.
Fair enough.
So everybody who can help with anything, so we should be working hard now. Yeah.
Okay, that's yes. I think we haven't really mentioned that. That's a good point. You also had something to say about Lindsey Williams, I guess it is, and some recent information coming out about Trump, etc. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
It's more than like the elite, some elite friends of Lindsey Williams. Lindsey Williams was invited in the middle of the 80s to Bahamas, that these New World Order Illuminati people, the chosen one who would work for the top Illuminati, the traitors, I would say, that they were trained there on Bahamas. So he has met many of these people for 3 years. So he has contact still with some of these elites, so-called elites. And one of them has said that the elites, the top Illuminati, don't know what to do now, that they are like almost panicking. Of course, their plan, the original plan, was not successful since 2013. Excuse me, I have to drink a little bit.
Okay, and let me, while you're doing that, explain to the people here who Lindsey Williams is. He's a priest. I don't know if he still is a priest, but he was hired by the oil companies to work and to counsel oilmen in the field, as I recall, is how he started. And then he befriended the top officials running those oil companies, and that's how he eventually got in deep with the Illuminati and has gone to many of their meetings. And he's something of a whistleblower, reporting, but he's been reporting things for years, some of which are correct and have happened or about to happen possibly. But some of his stuff is also, he's being sold some bills of goods, misled purposely, of course, so that he will not always be correct. But go ahead.
But the situation was very, very dangerous in the year 2013, so that the Illuminati really wanted to start a cascade of extermination, and it was not successful. It was stopped, prevented. But the times are very dark now, but it could have been much, much, much darker if the Illuminati would have been successful to do what they wished for since 2013. So they have been much more exposed, and I believe it would be good to work on another type of legislation which works for us. But like the Illuminati have thought about everything, so on the top of each organization almost is an Illuminati puppet or so, but not really yet. So we should really work hard now and do something about the legislation. And I want to discuss these things with different people, what we could achieve, but it feels that we have to build it from the bottom again. This whole system is so wrong. So yeah.
Okay. Did you want to say anything else before I move on, and we can come back to you, of course?
Yeah, you can take.
All right. So let me see. Let me get this camera going again. Sorry. All right, and thank you very much for your information and presentation. And this is all very important information, obviously. Okay, so of course the Skype is. Let's see. I don't know how we. Whatever I do here. So anyway, I guess they're trying to block me, so I'm going to use a different camera. So while they do this, because this is typical of what they do. But at any rate, I'm going to share my screen. I have some diagrams that I want to show everyone. So if you just wait one moment, I'm going to switch cameras over here and get this diagram on the screen. So I had it's very interesting for those of you who know Project Camelot and watch my shows regularly. I had a very interesting individual on the show. Richard Lighthouse is the name he goes by. And he is someone who worked for NASA. He's a scientist, and he's written 100 books. I believe he has a PhD. I don't have his bio right in front of me, but it is on my website, projectcamelot.tv. So you can go and find also his latest ebook, which is about satellites and satellite weapons. I highly recommend it. Many of his books, if not all of his books, are free. So he's written 100 books and he writes about things like free energy and new technologies. And he thinks he has gotten to the bottom of what's going on in our universe. And he's quite a deep thinker. I've interviewed him more than once. I think this might even be the third time. However, this time he was focusing on the targeted individual program, as well as how this is all coming from via satellites and being aimed at humans on the ground. And so in essence, it's a weaponized program, which this whole targeting thing is. And he got into depth about where it's coming from, where it's financed, and by whom. And he also names the top officers in the various programs, as I've got a screenshot right now of one of his very excellent diagrams showing the different agencies that are involved here, and the gang stalking, the targeted individuals, the directed energy weapons, and which organizations are specially responsible. And then also the various Air Force bases. One I hope I'm going to find it, but it's U.S. Space Command. So it's the Air Force Space Command. And the one in particular, which is in Colorado Springs. There's another one that he names as well. And let's see if it's in small print here. No, it's not. I don't have it in front of me. But again, this particular interview was heavily targeted. He was being targeted before we even started. He said, please excuse me if I have to stop for a few minutes in midstream when he interviews me. He told me this ahead of time because he was so being targeted, and they would be aiming at his head. And he said he has a diagram showing where they aim specifically and how they target your head, even when you're sleeping. And he said very fascinating information about the fact that these satellites are aiming. There's one satellite. The way he put it was there was one, I believe he said one satellite that can handle the basically targeting of every human being in the United States, that it's already AI compliant, whatever you want to call that, and able to do that. That they are now in the process of buying 5 more so they can target and do the same thing worldwide. I believe they have Europe already in the bag at whatever language you want to use. And I also want to say that you see that I'm doing this broadcast, so we're not having any problems yet. And the interview with him, they were constantly interfering via YouTube. So at our end, between the two of us, I was recording on a different device, luckily, so the interview is now up on YouTube. But the YouTube version was interfered with on picture constantly, and audio was almost unintelligible, and especially my audio. And I wanted to tell people why this is, because, I know not every person who is on my channel is going to hear this, but I hope some people will, to understand that this is actually a pattern that I've noticed, and why it is. It's not because I have such wonderful pearls of wisdom. It's because of the way I focus the attention of the viewer by my questions and by my dialogue with whatever person I'm interviewing, and therefore interfere with what would naturally be. I don't know if you've noticed that there is a tendency of people who listen to videos and watch videos to zone out. They think they're watching, they think they're getting the information, but a lot of times they're actually kind of being put into a state of, a trance-like, zone-like state. For some reason, just because of the way I'm engineered, I interrupt that zoning out sort of capability that people have, or tendency, and refocus. And so what they have done in this latest interview is basically they turned my sound off. And so you couldn't hear me at all. You could hear him intermittently. And the same thing with the picture. They don't want you to look at me. So this is very interesting. You could see him on some of the picture, and see the reason I'm noticing all these kinds of things is when someone is attacked. Simon Parks, he was very much attacked also when we did a particular show on certain subjects. And there have been others, obviously, where the sound is absolutely diabolical. You can't deal with it. And, luckily I recorded these things on other devices and have saved my videos as a result. But it's very important to understand that they completely control YouTube, which is a no-brainer. I'm sure that most people understand that. But nothing is so obvious as when they literally do it almost like by hand, as they did the other night with Richard Lighthouse. And clearly his information is very, very crucial. So I want to really urge everyone to listen to that. Now, I was told that there's also some kind of targeting put on that version, which is that people who listen to it have complained of headaches, which means they've embedded in the sound some kind of technology that causes you to turn away from it. So if you can manage to, gear yourself up and put, with crystals and various techniques that there are out there, actually, shungite is a way to protect yourself from this sort of thing. And certain energy things that you can put on yourself to block the negative stuff they put out there, and also to put yourself in an elevated meditational state to where you cannot be interfered with, surround yourself with a certain kind of light, etc. We do have these technologies. I'm saying our human technologies are natural, built into our bodies. So it is completely possible for you to do this. So at any rate, what I'm saying here is that not only were we talking about targeting, but we were being targeted. So it's very sort of a demonstration, if you will. Again, these are his very good diagrams, and they are all available on my website at projectcamelot.tv. If you go to the interview itself, on that page, you'll find a link to his book about the subject of satellite weapons, how humans are being targeted. He's got, like I say, 100 books. He's written books on targeting, how to deal with the targeting he's also given suggestions in that interview. So all of this is to say that this is an ongoing program, that it is being run out of, for example, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was on the screen. And basically, he's saying that we are all tracked, and this is correct, not just targeted individuals. And it's also important for people to realize that because I'm a centralization place, I interview a lot of people, and I go across the borders. I don't care if somebody never did an interview in their life, or if somebody is, so well known it's ridiculous. In other words, I go across the gamut. If I'm attracted and I get the sort of message that somebody needs to come forward and be interviewed, then I do it. And that's how I work. I don't do things based only on human logic. Okay, I use other techniques, and I am in communication with other beings as well. Now, I do want to say that this program, I want to make sure to put all the diagrams on here, at least briefly. Yeah, this one. And it is interesting how the Air Force is very instrumental. It's also important to realize that we know for a fact that Navy intelligence is in charge, but that the Air Force is kind of like implements, if you want to say. They implement the programs. And now, as far as the individuals he has named, these people work for other people, and they are all being directed under the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, because it's important to know that there's no point in going to somebody's house and, trying to take them out, because they'll just be replaced tomorrow. One point he does make, which is very, very good and interesting, is letting people know that even the people at the top, their children and they themselves are being tracked and watched constantly. So it is not a one-way street. In other words, this sort of wrapping a net around the planet and basically trying to track and control every human being has been a plan in the works for many, many years, if not eons, going back to the Anunnaki, who wanted to control humans and interfered with our DNA all those years ago. And they did not create us, by the way. That's often misunderstood. And if you want more information about where humans come from and how they were created, etc., then you need to learn what the information comes from the guardian races that are in touch with Oceana Dean, and she's written 2 very important books that trace this lineage, this human seeding, as they call it, to planet Earth and where we came from, which is Lyra and other faraway places, really. As Bob Dean says, we come from the stars and we will return to the stars. I'm going to stop there. I do have more things that I want to contribute, and I want to allow now Deborah Tavares, going around the circle again, to come forward and talk about basically her next her next piece of information and investigation. So, Deborah, are you there?
Yes, thank you so much. Again, Deborah Tavares with StopTheCrime.net, encouraging everyone to sign up on our channel and get our email blasts, as well as taking a constant look at the YouTubes that we post, because we are being harvested now, and we're being certainly reduced by populations. And we've talked about the various types of programs that are in place with mass planned genocide, certainly the inability for people to adjust as they are moved around the globe with various types of energy weapons and assaults and attacks. We are in a war, and we're now finding ourselves in a war economy where our cities do not have enough resources to repair the damage and loss. And I address that through the resilient plans. I have a YouTube up called Kill Cities by Rothschild and Rockefeller. Now, this was taken down by YouTube, but we appealed it and were able to get this back up. So all of you can see Kill Cities by Rothschild and Rockefeller and understand the insidious plans. And most people are so overwhelmed just surviving and running around in a hyperactive state to meet all of their social obligations that people just don't have the time to think logically. Plus, already, most people are completely mind controlled. So we do face many aspects of how we've been lobotomized through the food supply, the water, the air, and certainly the programming and MK Ultra and more. But what I want to talk about is you heard Miles Johnson talking about the YouTube, and I want to thank you for making me aware of this particular interview. And for those of you that have not seen it, it's on Miles' YouTube channel, and the entitlement of the title of the YouTube is Bases 95 Part 2, Laura's Interrupted Journey. That's Bases 95 Part 2, Laura's Interrupted Journey. And I do have an insider comment on that. And what we're, of course, understanding is that these, of course, are very real experiments, not only done in the UK and Ireland and Scotland, but also here in the United States at Dulce, New Mexico, too. And we understand that the Scottish and Irish children are preferred because of their genetics and supposed genetic psi power potentials. And that these experiments are supposedly alien ET military super soldier genetic experiments to breed the ideal psychic warrior and the super soldier. And this cruelty and abuse to children is evil beyond words. And so for those of you that haven't seen this, I would recommend that you start understanding a greater enormity of what we all face. But getting back to what we all face right now, right here, in all of our homes, everywhere, no matter where you live, no matter where you are listening to this, I think it's important to understand what we now will talk about. What we've learned is that earthquakes are intentionally caused by reservoirs and dams. And I have a YouTube video up called Earthquakes Intentionally Caused by Reservoirs and Dams. Just go to stopthecrime.net to our YouTube video channel to understand. I'm going to give you some information about why that is so. Again, it's most important to understand that our water comes from primary water, the primary water cycle. And that's why when I first spoke during this roundtable earlier, I mentioned primarywater.org. Probably the best information that you're going to hear me discuss is water is a renewable, and we have a much higher IQ when we're able to certainly drink that water. But that's been eliminated for the majority of the world's populations. We've been forced into the polluted, toxic atmospheric water. Of course, it's not only polluted with radiation and all of the chemicals and heavy metals from the aerosol spraying programs, but then, of course, run over our fields and lands and streets, and then are contained in these reservoirs and dam systems so that they can disperse this toxic secondary water cycle into our homes after they further add more chemicals and poisons, fluoride, etc. So we have a faulty distribution system that is unnecessary. What we need to look at, and I encourage all of you to please look at the eighth wonder of the world, the Great Man-Made River Project that I referred to, that Muammar Gaddafi built. You can type that in, or you can also go to primarywater.org and take a look at what primary water looked like in Libya before it was blown up. So why are dams and reservoirs causing earthquakes? Well, this is very important because we're certainly going to be hit with many earthquakes. And earthquakes have been responsible for the deaths of millions of people and the destruction of towns and villages throughout the world. And we're being told now, because of climate change, which is weather weapons, and the triggering of natural resource activity into creating mass destruction and chaos. So it's important to understand that earthquakes are triggered by dams and by reservoirs. And you ask yourself, well, how is that? Well, I will explain that. But again, I encourage you to listen to the YouTube, Earthquakes Intentionally Caused by Reservoirs and Dams. Just a few sentences about that and how this is accomplished and how this is intentionally accomplished. Because, for an example, here in the United States, we have the Hoover Dam that was built in the 1930s. And then subsequent to the completion of the dam, they built Lake Mead. And prior to that, there were no earthquake activities ever recorded in that area until the Hoover Dam was built, and then Lake Mead ensued, the entrapment of water. So how and what is happening, and what has happened? I'm going to first talk about some of the history, some of the most serious cases of earthquakes. There was a 7.9 magnitude back in 2008, and it killed over 80,000 people. And this was linked to the construction of a dam. The most widely accepted explanation of how dams cause earthquakes is it's related to the additional weight of the water pressure that's created above the area. In other words, they call it induced water weight, and that causes the pressure in the micro cracks and fissures in the ground under the entrapped water and or near a reservoir. And when the pressure of the water in the rocks under these entrapped water bodies, false, fake lakes, increases. It acts as a lubricant with faults, which are already under tectonic strain, but are prevented from slipping by the friction of the rock surfaces. And we're understanding that the depth of the reservoirs are some of the most important factors in the enormity of the quakes that they produce, but that the volume of water plays the most significant role in triggering the earthquakes and can be immediately noticed during filling periods of reservoirs. So, for example, right now here in California, we're being hit with mass flooding and weaponized weather and rain events right now. They burned us out back in October of 2 consecutive years, 2017, 2018. Now we're being flooded out, and people are certainly impeded with travel now, and we have lots of rivers overflowing. And again, we have wastewater treatment plants being jeopardized as well. But when these fake lakes or reservoirs fill, earthquakes then are created, and it is the ebb and flow, the use of the water when it's full, and then when it's used in the drier months for irrigation purposes. And many dams that have been also built on seismically active regions, such as in the Himalayas, the southwest China, Iran, Turkey, and Chile. And the International Rivers calls for a moratorium on the construction of high dams in earthquake-prone areas. That would only be natural to expect that. But we need to understand that this is all intentional, because water does not need to be moved around and entrapped. And certainly when they know that they have a multiple opportunity of creating earthquakes as well. So many people now are realizing they don't want to live near a reservoir or a dam. They don't really want to be near a wastewater treatment plant if they can help it. And they want to move away from the coast. So why would people also wish to be away from the coast? Because it's important to note that every single military branch, we're talking every single branch in the military, has been taken by the cabal. It's fully operational and is in control by others, not us, and not the governments that we believe represent us. They don't. And we have a YouTube up, and it's very important to understand what is happening on our coastlines. It's called Coastlines Under Attack. Storm surge artificially created. And when people hear that word, storm surge artificially created, eyes glass over, and they can't imagine that occurring. Well, that YouTube, again, discusses how this has all been created. And what we learned was from the NASA document that I have on StopTheCrime.net. In World War II, had either one of the nuclear bombs not detonated in Japan, we had worked with Auckland, with Australia, and with the United States in building what they called then a blast wave accelerator. And they said that it would create a tsunami that would be 33 feet in height. I find that 33 feet to be a very interesting number. But it was called Operation SEAL, S-E-A-L. Well, they didn't need to utilize that back then against the low-lying areas of Japan because, of course, the bombs detonated. Moving forward, certainly we're seeing now the use of these technologies along the coastlines worldwide. And what they are doing, it's called forced or planned retreat. All of you can just type that in your search, coastlines planned retreat, and you will find that this is occurring around all the coastlines throughout the entire world. Everything that I am talking about is worldwide. And while you may hear me refer to documents here in California or fires here in California. This is a worldwide situation that is occurring. Massive, weaponized events created against all of us to maneuver us into planned cities and maneuvering many of us onto the streets where we won't survive. So when you look at the reason for moving us off the coastlines, it's because there is negative ions. We're less able to be mind controlled because of the constant surf that hits the beaches and creates the ions that go across our countries. And people feel better in general living on the coastlines, which is why 70% of the world's population happen to live on the coastlines. And when you force people off the coastlines, which is what the planned retreat is doing, people then are deprived of the negative ions and become more controlled, more mind controlled. And I did a YouTube several years ago, and it's called Cooking of Humanity. We interviewed Barry Trower when he was visiting up here in the United States. And I actually went to that interview with the idea that we were going to discuss this, at the time, this 12-page document that we found on the whitehouse.gov website that, in fact, showed the radiation around the coastlines of the entire United States. And so the Cooking of Humanity, you will see me holding that document. We never discussed that when we were talking to Barry Trower. We were discussing the frequencies of smart meters, cell phones, and the like. But what we need to understand is what that represented and what that is. And this was from the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. And this is targeting of the United States, the military-industrial complex, with radar. And it is a silent weapons system and the deployment of this silent weapons system. And it's quantum computers, and which is mind theft and is now certainly controlling most people. The invasion of the human brain with artificial intelligence and controlling our specific thoughts, our emotions, and directing our physical actions into unsuspecting human beings. And the map that is shown on this document literally does show the end of any shred of free will as we have previously known it. And this is real, and the image of the map was found on the White House website, and the technologies and methodologies that we describe and were certainly backed by NASA, the Future of War circa 2001, and additional reviews by Intel when we certainly originally found this document. And who's behind this document? Well, it's important to note that the White House Spectrum Management Team is Google Inc., Microsoft Corporation, Stanford and Harvard Universities, Virginia Tech, UC Berkeley here in California, the National Telecommunications and Information Association, the FCC, and NSA, and many other agencies. So what we face is literally the dumbing down of all humans. And that's why we're now standing in the jaws of depopulation and danger. And there's really no registering, by and large, of the majority of people. And so as we look at the intentional earthquakes, the elimination of people to live on the coastlines. So let me just explain planned retreat so that you understand. Planned retreat means if you have property or your home is on the coast, eventually you're going to be displaced as the ocean creeps up and devours your home. You're going to have to leave your home. You will have to dismantle it and leave. And there was a very interesting dispute going on in Del Mar, California, in Southern California. A very, very wealthy beach community was fighting with the code additions to the city ordinances where they wanted to insert the required planned retreat. And the people in Del Mar had money. They brought in attorneys, and they said, if you put this in code, what is going to, of course, happen is we won't be able to get financing on our homes. We won't be able to sell our homes. They'll be valueless. And where can we retreat to? There's nowhere in Del Mar that's high ground, and it's already heavily populated. Well, they were able to prevail and have that set aside for the time being. And then recently someone in another low-lying beach area here along the coast of California went before their presumed legislators, which, by the way, do not exist. They are talking heads for United Nations policies. But when they were able to speak, they said, what about the planned retreat here near the Santa Barbara area in California? And the person said, well, it's a fluid situation now. And they said, well, then what about what happened in Del Mar in Southern California? And they said they moved in too quickly with planned retreat. And they triggered people, and they're backing off and slowing the takedown so that people are not as combative. So that was literally a test to see what people would, and how people would react. But again, this is a very real reality. It is the absolute decimation of our lives. 70%, again, as I said, of the people and populations live on the coast. And this is going to be a massive devastation of all economies. And we're seeing that happening now. And certainly we know with the Fukushima radiation, again with Fukushima that occurred on March 11th of 2011, we already have decimation of our sea life here along the coast of California and elsewhere as well.
Okay. Now, Deborah, sorry, but it's just you've been going on quite a while. We have limited time for this. Again, trying to keep it under.
So I will wrap it up, Kerry, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah, you're
reminding me of this.
It's very good. I appreciate everything you're saying.
Yeah. So for everyone, please go to stopthecrime.net and sign up so you'll receive our email blast and listen to our YouTubes and prepare. We have a recommendation for an EMF meter on our solutions page of stopthecrime.net. It's a very simple meter to operate. It doesn't, however, pick up all frequencies, but there are enough that it picks up as you're driving through your communities. You'll be able to find the war zones where there's Wi-Fi, cell towers, smart meters, and the like, so that you can travel through your communities with an awareness of where the frequencies are going to create cell death. And so we really do need to be aware that we are living in war zones now, and tracking where, if you need to go into a shopping area, what are the levels of frequencies that are going to impede your continuation to live. So again, go to stopthecrime.net to our solutions page and take a look at that. It's available. We don't sell it. We work directly with, or refer you directly to, the company in Canada. And thank you so much for all that everyone is doing on this call, and Kerry for managing this opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, what we'd like to do is invite Miles to speak again. And what you can do, and you know, we don't have a lot of time left. We've got about 15 to 20 minutes, really max, where we can continue this conversation. So you can reply to things you've heard from the other speakers if you wish, or you can add whatever you'd like on your own, just to, you know, sort of speak to the whole situation. So it's your choice, and go ahead.
Okay, well, can you hear me? Yeah, essentially, what you said about Deborah said about Ireland. There's a particular company called Puppet Labs, which is its HQ is in Portland, Oregon, I believe. They chose Belfast to recruit staff because of their ability to interface with the artificial intelligence in computer systems. Computer systems have always been an AI designed to access the human mind, the human condition, so that video games and one of the prerequisites of getting a job there was your ability to actually interface with the video game that they would give you to play. And that operated, they chose to actually locate their HQ right beside BBC Northern Ireland, BBC in the Omar Road in central Belfast, which is interesting, since that's where I used to work. Also, the whole aspect of the Irish and their connection with the ancient story. One of the Dublin conference that we had way back in 2017, Eamon Ansborough highlighted the High Brazil aspect of things. High Brazil is an island which appears occasionally physically in 3D, which it's felt has got some kind of back connection with the ancient times of Atlantis. And it's also where Star Wars, the recent Disney Star Wars films were shot. So there's a connection there. As you watch the Star Wars films, you are actually engaging in a process of energy suckage or loose suckage to actually feed this AI in the first place. Also, with Laura herself, we are hoping to do a further update, but I don't want to give too much more on that. As far as the oceans are concerned, as this is the timeline for payback time for those individuals, such as the Rothschilds and what they've been doing, those creatures, whatever they want to call themselves. Coasts are a bit of a dodgy place to be. There already has been a feature on the local newspaper in the southwest of England, near Plymouth. What will you do if a tsunami hits? Now, the tsunami that's expected, and we are in a countdown for that, is when one of the major islands in the Canaries goes plop. Not splash, but plop. The science on this is 10 tsunamis, which will be traveling at 800 miles an hour and will have a wavelength of about 30 miles. So I think there'll be 30 miles between each wave, or it could be 300 miles between each wave. Now, the point about that is, as that comes to Western Europe, for Africa, the closer you are to it, actually, the better. You're going to get hit, but you're going to get hit hard, but quickly, and it'll be over quick. Western Europe, as it comes up to the shallow lands of France, the shallow flat areas of the continental shelf, that wave will rise in substantial height. That's the first wave. The 10th, by the time it's happened, things are going to be a bit of a mess. But that will basically essentially travel probably as far into Europe as the Alps. It'll be about 400 feet high as it comes up the English Channel, which I think from my personal point of view, I'm probably in an ideal situation. We've got a brewery here in the town. I can just go up there, get a stack of beer, homemade, go up to the Roundway Hill and watch it all happen. And in the event that there's a bit of a problem, maybe I can put a message in one of the bottles and whatever. This is about as high as it gets in the south of England. But there's a chance it might be a wee bit higher, so I might have to wear my flip-flops. But that's expected now. So what Deborah was referring to in terms of coastal areas, it's going to have pretty devastating effects. And obviously on the western side of the pond in the United States, the low-lying countries of the South America, Brazil, that's going to be a bit of a game changer as well. It appears this has happened many times before. The aspects of these volcanic islands is that they end up being like mushrooms. So as the volcanoes do their thing and they flow down, they don't actually go the whole way down to the sea floor. So there's a big hunk of rock that's sitting there like a mushroom, and that's going to go plop. And the plop's going to generate 10 waves. So that anyway, That's in this timeline now. The good things about it is we get rid of the bad guys and move on. My latest information on that is the emergence of the divine feminine, where we will all collectively move into a different paradigm as we're now going through what's called the omega point. And I think that rather than to do any further detail on that, we're just continuing to try and get a media center here in Wiltshire to do something bigger and better and faster and all the rest of it. And my website's thebasisproject.org. You can put www in front of that if you want. And we're continuing to do what we can. And thanks very much, Kerry. Gather. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Miles. And it's great, of course, having everyone on this panel of fascinating individuals, each one contributing wonderful things. So Alexandra JB, you're up now, if you don't mind. And if you want to speak to some of the things you've heard, fine. If you'd like to introduce new topics to be considered now and you know, on future panels, that's fine too.
Yeah, I feel that we are in a state of almost complete lawlessness. The people are doing such crimes, such obvious, visible crimes, and we are not reacting. So that we should start to do that, like, and on all fronts. What you like to work with? So pick something there, and everybody should do something now, because we could manage this. I'm optimistic, even if it looks so dark. And look, for example, NATO. They would have a new member from Macedonia, but Deborah there's this Word document on her homepage, which is from July 2001. And in this document, it's obvious that NATO is a terrorist, criminal, genocidal organization. So anybody who signs as a lawyer or part sign a document that another member should join is committing crime, because it's clearly documented genocide and terrorism. So, I was thinking that I have some suggestions what we could do with the legal situation to improve it. So I will continue to talk on other, like be part of other discussions in maybe even other languages. But I feel that I want to do maximum now because it's needed. We can manage. We don't need to be killed in billions. Thank you.
Okay, please give your contact information if you have some to give, and also your website.
Yeah, my website, because I have been targeted, and it was one case after the other. They wanted to pick me behind bars without any charges, actually, on the 6th of December of 2017. It was like ordered probably by the head of the Illuminati, because the same day he's got this announcement of Trump that the embassy will move in, like Israel will move to Jerusalem, which means like the third temple will be built. This other word, you have to see the whole situation. So since 2017, I couldn't do anything with my homepage. So it's so old, but I have 4 YouTube channels. 2 of them are blackmail, or excuse me, not blackmail, but are I have got severe strikes from on the Swedish YouTube channel and one of the English that I cannot publish there. But it's From Illusion to Reality, or Alexandra JB From Illusion to Reality, the YouTube channel. My homepage, it's nothing new there for 2 years. It's fromillusiontoreality.com.
Okay, fromillusiontoreality.com is her website.
Yeah.
And is your contact information, if somebody wants to write to you, what is your email address, or do you have a contact form on your website?
No, it's email address. It's fromillusiontoreality at email.cz, like Czech Republic.
Oh, I see. CZ. Okay, fine. Okay, very good. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. And I guess what I wanted to say was, well, there's a huge amount.
Just before you mention that, Kerry, we're trying to get Deborah to walk across the pond to get her to Europe. It would be really great if we could get her to there's a couple of conferences here. And rather than have her on the telephone, we'd like to have her in spirit and in person in this part of the world. That's a bit of a sort of a, hello, Deborah, get your ass over here.
Okay, I think that would be lovely. And if we could raise the funding, I am planning to do another Awake and Aware conference this summer. And I would love to have you speak, Deborah, if that was humanly possible. But of course, it would require we don't have funding for that kind of thing where we can't pay, people to fly over and all of that. But perhaps, there's ways to raise funds from individuals, on our networks.
This is Deborah. And of course, I'm most interested in helping with the overall awareness of what all the documents are saying. And we'll talk off air about those opportunities. And I, of course, would be most interested in sharing in any way I can, which is what I'm doing every day right now here. So, again, I look forward to having an extended conversation about that. And I thank you so much, Miles, for that invitation, and also from you as well. I think the opportunity of us all coming together and talking about what we all face is basically it's necessary now. As Alexandra was saying, everybody must do something, no matter what it is at this point. And for those of us that have already been throwing ourselves into this for so long, we have to keep on with the stamina to get to the final goal, whatever that may end up being. So again, most appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Well, what I want to say here is just for, and I'm not sure how to do this, so I'm just going to fool around with this window here. I'm not sure what I'm doing, but at any rate, I wanted to let people know that in the last few days, I was sent 2 links from a very high level person who worked for the very dark side in the financial industry, so to speak, and for some reason got in touch with me. And I've had some interesting off the record interviews with this person. And I can tell you that he sent me 2 links, and I will post both of those. One of them I've already posted on my Facebook and on YouTube and told people about, which has to do with what was basically a public YouTube by this individual whose name I've got to find it. But at any rate, he's a well-known financial sort of pundit, and he is talking about, and this is a year ago, basically the taking down in a matter of hours of the entire world financial system. And we have a former witness that also corroborates this sort of ability of the people in charge of the finances and the banks and IMF and you name it, World Bank, etc. These individuals have the ability to take our system down, and they have been planning what is known as the global reset, the financial reset, etc. So just want to say that he sent me this year-old sort of expose by this financial guy talking about that it was fairly imminent as far as he could judge. And he is somebody who hangs out with these people that kind of run things. And he was warning people. Now he's kept relatively out there in terms of, recommending you invest in gold and all of this thing. And now he has done some other interviews, but it's interesting to me that he's not able to give another warning. But for some reason, again, it's because this very high level financial person sent this year-old thing to me that it indicates that there's something that might be imminent in regard to a global reset. Many people have felt that they're long overdue for doing their plans. And Camelot was told back in the very early days that this was their plan. They've been rolling it out, but they've had several sort of roadblocks in the way. But I can tell you that on top of that link, and I will get the details and put them on this, this YouTube here. I'll put it in the part where you put links. I'll also put it on my website where this interview or this roundtable is. And the other thing is this individual who is talking about what is in essence a magnetic pole reversal, if I understand it correctly. And he's also now sending me that. So we had heard years and many years ago that there would be such a thing. We do know that the magnetic poles have been shifting and they're being tracked and so on and so forth. But I'm simply saying that this is an individual who has been, well, he worked very closely with George Bush, Bush Sr., for example, and so on. So this is the kind of thing that I'm being sent at this time. Now, whether that means something is imminent or not, I don't know. I'm, of course, trying to get more information. But I just want to put this out there just for people to be aware that although we haven't in this particular video addressed the financial system at all, everyone will know that it is extremely precarious, and there are all kinds of signs of danger within our in our countries, Europe, Brexit coming along. Brexit may indeed be instrumental in keeping, as Cameron Bailey, one of my whistleblowers who went off the deep end at a certain point and was heavily under attack, of course, because he grew up, his family had been supporting the City of London for many years in the financial world. And so he actually corroborates the information that I was talking about just now. But nonetheless, saying that the City of London wanted a Brexit so that they could be insulated from the impact of what may be this financial reset. If you can understand how that might work in their favor, if they're not tied to Europe when the financial reset comes through. Of course, the Illuminati being centered, the dark magicians, certainly in England as one of their central locations. Certainly the P2 Lodge is another central location in southern France. And there are other places, certainly Germany, and so on. So I do want to say that humanity is not thrown anything that they can't overcome, in my view. In other words, we are made up of 12 or more ET races, as I've said many times, and there's no reason why they would create an experiment and then have it fail. And they have the forethought to be able to program not only our, what would be the challenges, but our abilities to overcome those challenges into our genome. And so I think it's very important to realize that we have help from hidden help. I know we've talked quite in, the more negative side of it to warn people, because that's very important. You're not going to be triggered if you don't realize and take seriously these incredible challenges that we're faced with. So those people that are busy out there going, oh, they're running for cover, they're in a panic, all this kind of thing. Yeah, maybe some individuals are in that headspace, but I have to say, and there are some defectors coming over from the Illuminati, the people that have worked on the dark side that have the possibility of becoming whistleblowers, although they may not live to see the day, as this is the way it happens. So, it's important to realize that we have built into our genome the ability to survive all of this. including AI, including the nanosatellites, which, by the way, are in a grid above our heads that nobody's mentioning, and which I did mention in my interview with Richard Lighthouse, and he was not even totally aware of that. Again, called Project Leonid, and Anthony Sanchez, who was approached by the Lockheed Martin scientists who were designing and building those AI self-replicating nanosatellites that are part of this targeting grid that can be aimed at us, okay, but can also be aimed, let's say, off planet, out in the solar system. There's a lot of, there's a grid of protection also because we've got incoming threats, some of which we haven't mentioned, and this may not be the place for it because we don't go down that road talking too much about the ET situation, but I can assure you that it is just as sort of imminent and crucial and all built into this scenario. So many, many challenges, just as humanity is also reaching sort of an ascension level within our genome. So just wanted to put all of that out there. I'm Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot.
Kerry, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to just make a quick comment about what you're talking about with the new green energy credit system that is eliminating the petrodollar. And we're seeing that occurring now. And I look forward to doing another show with you where we will get into that, because this is all part of what Rothschild through Pacific Gas and Electric and the Solarin interfacing with satellites for electrifying the global grid, the electric grid, and this is behind the new the green credit system, and this is literally shredding all monetary systems to an energy system, and we'll talk about that.
Okay, very good. So we're going to have to close this down now. If anyone wants to make a parting remark, feel free. Just speak up or wave your hand or take a.
Well, I think it's the message I have is that nobody will be left behind. No one's going to be left behind as we move to a new situation. Although some others think that some others should be left behind. But if we hang in there and keep our focus, we're going to win this. It's going to be a better time. And the individuals who are doing what they think they're getting away with aren't getting away with it this time.
All right. Okay. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you so much.
So much.
Okay, and I'm just going to shut this down and hang up on you, Deborah, and just do some last parting remarks here on the video, and then put my credits up. So, thanks, guys. Really appreciate your presence.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay. All right. So, crazy.
Can we talk for a moment here?
Yeah. Hold on one second, because I'm still on the air. And actually, I have to run the credits, so I'm going to close this off. I can't keep everything going. Did you want to say something on the air here, Deborah?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay. So please stand by. I'm going to mute you for the moment and run the credits. It'll be a moment in either that or I can call you back. So either way. Okay. So now I think I've got that done. Hold on one moment. Putting you on mute, Deborah. Okay, so what I want to do here is I just want to let everyone know, some people know that I have been invited to interview John Lear on stage at the UFO MegaCon conference that's in Laughlin on March 24th. It's a Sunday, and the conference actually goes for the whole week. And it's also, so that does seem to be being ironed out. It does look like I will be there on stage with John the evening of Sunday, as far as I know, time-wise, but you can go to their website, which is ufomegacon.com, if I understand. And I'm going to put a banner up here to let everyone know that that is happening. And we were able to, I think, have worked out all the issues that had cropped up that John had made mention of, and so that was very very kind of the people at and the organization behind the what is in essence UFO MegaCon conference. And so just wanted to make people aware of that coming up March 24th. Also want to let people know that Bill Ryan, my former partner, actually I've been in operation for 14 years. He was with a partner with me on Camelot in the first 3 years. So just to keep things in perspective, but nonetheless, he will be doing a presentation. He's been invited to speak there and will be presenting some material about early days of Camelot on the Wednesday. I think he's on the schedule for that. And we'll be meeting up with John Lear on Saturday, the Saturday, which is the 23rd, going into the 24th. So just wanted to let people know that that's what's happening. And other than that, have a good day. I'll be back tomorrow with an interview with a Pleiadian, a self-proclaimed Pleiadian called Dale Harder. And we'll be talking to him about his story. He's a former NASA employee as well as, I believe, a scientist and more. So stay tuned for that tomorrow. I think that is, actually, I'm not sure what time it is. I think it might be 7 p.m. tomorrow. And so take care and thank you for watching and listening. Bye-bye.